I am very excited to be introducing two of my colleagues, two of my very dear friends, Eva and Alex. Eva is our Director of State Sustainability here at Emerge America, helping support our affiliates do the work that they do. She has also raised millions of dollars for campaigns across her career. And Alex is the former Executive Director of Emerge New Mexico and is staying on as their senior advisor, and has also been helping to support, coach, and uplift candidates throughout the years. I'm going to be sharing my screen right now. Present. And just to kick us off, as a welcome, in case you are confused, we are Emerge. You can reach us at contact@emergeamerica.org, or we do have affiliates in 27 states. So you can check out our website, see if that applies to you, and reach out to your staff there. And thank you for joining us. This is how we do change the face of politics and power. Folks like you getting some of the skills, some of this motivation to take their passions and put them into elected positions to create change. So I'm going to turn it over. I believe Alex is kicking us off. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Ryan. So really quick, if y'all see me look this way and this way, it's because I have two different screens. I'm not trying to not pay attention to folks. But thank you so much, Ryan, for having us and for putting this together. Thank you to the folks who are watching and will watch in the future. It is so important that we have people from our communities representing us in office. So thank you just for being here today and for being involved. So what we're going to go over in this training are three key components. One, finding your why. What's your story? Why you're running for office and how that storytelling can help you with that goal. Moving your passion to your position. What office do you want to run for? When and where should you start running, and how can your passions support those efforts? And then finally, building both your personal path to running for office and then your candidate path to running for this seat. So we're going to start with finding your why. So oftentimes our why or our actions are led by our values. You know, our actions speak so much about what our values say, and our values are led by our why or our life experiences. So in this case, you can kind of think backwards about how your life experiences and your why and your values lead to everything. Issues connect us to policies. Our values connect us to the greater vision of the world we want to see, and our stories connect us to one another. So you can build backwards there. So we're going to give y'all an example. The issue can be SNAP benefits, and your position is that I oppose cuts to SNAP benefits. And your value is that in no nation, much less the richest nation in the world, no one should go to bed hungry. No one should worry about where their next meal is going to come from. So your story, this is actually a story of Ryan's, but I have one that's very similar. I came from teenage parents, and young parents just don't really have a whole lot of access to resources. So when I was a young child, my family really relied on a variety of different benefits, including food stamps. And I am who I am today because one, those food stamps literally gave me the nutrition I needed to survive, but two, they gave my family a path to have some flexibility as they were making their way, and we were all kind of growing together. So we need to preserve this lifeline for all families today and tomorrow. So that story really helps connect somebody to your values in a way that just saying, oh, I oppose cuts to food stamps would not really get to. You learned a lot from me in that story. One about coming from a working class family, my personal values, and about my experiences. The other thing about that story is that other people who come from a similar background now feel more represented and understand why I'm going to not just support this one issue, but why I'm there for them. So we want to give y'all a try. It's your turn. Take a moment to reflect on 1, 2, 3 issues that you really care about. Write down those issues and then start doing that backtracking. That's an action that leads you to believe in that issue or to support that issue. What are the values that got you to this place? And then what were your experiences? What is your why? What is your personal story that led you to those values? And start making those connections. And I think now I'm actually passing it over to Eva.
Thanks, Alex. I'm happy to take the ball from you. So thank you, Alex, for taking us through that journey of, finding your why. And I really hope some of you were able to sort of really reflect and journal. What is your why? We're going to talk a little bit, expand on that, on how your why is sort of going to transition you into putting it into power, into a position. So the first thing I want you to, think of, like now that you've reflected a bit about what your why is to have a scenario. And if you are, in a room with your eyes closed and you're envisioning your future, what does that lifetime achievement award that you are receiving from your favorite person in the world, or your hero is giving to you? What is your lifetime achievement success? And, it could be, for example, I was able to end child hunger, right? And, you could go ambitious, go high. That's what we're here for. And then you just want to think about, like, how does that feel? What does that even look like? Who is most impacted by that change and what you were able to sort of accomplish? And so I really want you to sort of tangibly feel what that lifetime achievement award feels like. Another way you want to think about your why is maybe it's something very just small and tangible for right now. I live in Koreatown, Los Angeles. We have the worst roads, I think, here in my city. I love my city, but my roads drive me insane. Maybe I want to run for office just to fix some potholes in the street. It affects me and my community daily, and I feel like I'm the most equipped to actually get that done. Maybe your why is, how you want to think about sort of running for office and how it sort of impacts your lifestyle and your life. Obviously, if you run for a higher office that's highly visible and you move up the ranks, you might be the next Michelle Obama, where, Michelle is the first lady is walking through the grocery store and you're like, oh my God, that's Michelle Obama. And people are going to want to stop and talk to you. But for example, I don't know what my school board members look like. If I saw them in a grocery store, I probably wouldn't stop them because I wouldn't know that they're a school board member. So you kind of want to think about whether you want sort of this run for office to sort of be high visibility. Do you want to have it a huge impact on your daily life? Or would you want to sort of make it kind of scale it back based on your capacity and your visibility of how you want to sort of be looked at in the world? And so just kind of we talked a little bit more about the why, but now we want to transition into the what. And so what position is right for you? Things to consider, and as a way to best transition it from the why into the what is your passion, right? So we talked about sort of what that lifetime achievement award would be. That would be your passion. Your impact. What do you want to get done? What do you want to see change in your community, or for the futures of the people around you? And then there's capacity. How much you have time and commitment to put into not only running for office, but also taking that office once you win, right? And what does that look like? Next slide. So the good news is, is that there's over 500,000 elected positions across the country. So there's a lot to choose from, and you could definitely find a position that fits that impact, and that capacity. But you might want to ask several questions, like, where do I feel like I could do the most good now, and then maybe run for a higher office later? How do I feel about my network, and how can it get something specifically done today? Will I be put in a position to make more friends than enemies? Would I be put in a position to vote for something that I'm against or I'm for? So you want to look at sort of like all those sort of criterias of what would be the best position. And of course, the positions can range from what we know are the highest, the US presidency, the US senator, and US congressperson. But I'm originally from Miami, Florida. And if we have any Southeast people in here, you know that mosquitoes are a huge part of our lives. And we actually have a mosquito control board in Southeast Florida. So, and that's a huge, important position, because it really does impact the daily lives and the quality of life of people in South Florida. So, you really want to think about sort of the range opportunities, but what actually fits your needs, your impacts, and your passions. And just as a fun fact, 66 Emerge alum ran for 66 of our different offices just last November. So kind of, putting women in office in all these different sort of places up and down the ballot is kind of what we do. Now, where? We talked about who, why, and what. Where do you want to run? A lot of these positions are geography based. That's how usually it works with a representative democracy. You're looking for communities to actually lead. So you might want to think about strategizing about who do you want to represent and where. So do you want to run for office where you are right now? Where you're sort of living and you're working? Is this the community that you feel like you could represent, because your community will be your constituents? You also need a strong base to win. We're going to talk about, engaging your network a little later, but do you feel like you have a strong enough base in that location to propel yourself to run for office? Or could you build a base in that location to propel yourself to run for office? And is this a place, or do you want to be strategic? Maybe you would like to move somewhere else that you feel like you would have a better position to have a bigger impact, or to win a higher position or win the race. When? We're going through all the W's today. So when should you run? Well, there's two ways to think about this. You could either think about it in the political way or the personal way. I highly recommend for you to think about it in both ways. So political, to figure out when you should run, you first want to see whether that seat that you think of, that you're thinking of, is an open seat. There's a higher win rate if you're able to run for a position that doesn't have an incumbent. And sometimes that's just about timing, right? And to see when that position is up, but also who held it, and are they also thinking of running for re-election? But you also might want to challenge an incumbent. A lot of our alums do it, and they're very successful. And maybe you feel like it's your time and you could do a better job. So that's very possible as well. But I also want you to think about what else is on the ballot. I currently live in California, as I mentioned before, and we are proposition haven. Every single election has a proposition on it, and actually just change the dynamics of how that election looks like. Maybe it means more turnout in in more high density communities, or less turnout in high density communities. Maybe we're seeing more of a Latino voter turnout because of a certain proposition ballot that they feel very strongly for. And how would that impact your race, right? But then there's also the personal aspects of running for office. relationships are a huge part of the way we deal, like, we go about life. Are your relationships, in a good position? Like you could put some time and effort into to running for office. Your responsibilities. Are you in a situation where you're having overly full-time job and you might not have that time or capacity to do it? And then finances, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but making sure that you're in a very secure position financially, because running for office could mean time. And then, as we know, time means money. And so going further, we've gone through all the W's. Are you prepared to win? And say like, yeah, I'm prepared to win, but are you really? So the first thing I want you to think about is like, do you have a path to victory? And so, you don't need to have all the answers right now, but I want you to start thinking about it. Is there a path for victory for me? And am I prepared to do the work to launch a competitive campaign if there is a path to victory? What would that look like? How much would I have to raise? How much time would I have to spend to actually raise it? Can I make a compelling case for why I'm the best candidate for this seat? Do you feel like your message is not only compelling for yourself, but also for the people that you're trying to engage in your network and also vote for you? Those are things I want you to think about. Are you prepared to win? Because you could go through the election and go through, the journey, but are you ready to work on day one? And most of the time it's a yes, but I want you to think about it a little bit further in these questions. Okay, so hear me out. This is one of those elephants in the room. So we'd love to talk about it Emerge, but some people feel a little woozy about it. There's a possibility you might lose. But you know what? That doesn't mean that it's a win all be all. There's a lot of benefits to losing. And, a lot of people don't think about them, but we really want to, hone them down here at Emerge. The idea is that like, if you're not able to win, are you also, the questions are like, can you voice a concern or an issue and elevate it so a lot of people are talking about it? Are you moving the needle to bring up more, bring more Latinos and Latinas into, the dialogue and the discussion? Are you setting yourself up for maybe a run later down in life where you're more, you're in a better position to actually win? Those are great questions and great benefits to actually losing. And sometimes it's not about, well, or maybe it's the path to, what's the path to win? Well, does this move the needle in some way that I feel like I'm making an impact for my community? And then when would those costs of the running and losing outweigh the benefits, right? So we don't want you to just run knowing that you're going to lose if it's not strategic, but you want to make sure that the benefits to even losing outweighs anything else. And then again, like a lot of plenty successful politicians have run and lost. What we like for you to do is think about it strategically and how outweigh those sort of benefits and costs. So now it's your turn to sort of figure out, now that you've figured out your why, and you've had that lifetime achievement visualization and you know your future, what position are you thinking that best fits your passions? And, given sort of the timing, the whens and the whats, what position do you feel is good enough for you? And the best part of this is like actually thinking, well, maybe mosquito control board is the best place for my passions, and that's great. At least like think about it. So you're putting it sort of like in the universe to move on and actually do it. And I think I'm taking it back to Alex.
Yeah, thanks so much, Eva. So you've thought about all the W's. Every W there was to think about, you thought about it, as well as those key points of winning, losing, and what everything looks like. And you've chosen an office to run for. Now it's time to build your path. So I want you to take a moment and think about it. You're running for office. It's happening. What do you need to be true for you to be 100% ready to run? Take a moment to reflect on that. Well, we have some bad news. The bad news, just like Bunny said earlier, you're never going to be 100% ready to run. You're just not. We often hear it compared to having kiddos. Most of the time, folks are not 100% ready. You just kind of decide when you want to jump in. And that's the same thing here for running for office. There's always going to be a million things telling you no. In fact, there were systems built upon telling you no. So you're going to have to work hard to tell yourself, no, this is the, or to tell yourself, yes, this is the right time to run for office. It might not be perfect, but perfect's not real. So like we said, the good news is that it's okay. Take that perfection off the table. I know for me, in my entire life, taking perfection off the table is when I actually started making moves, when I actually started living. And it's the same way when you're running for office. When you take that never going to be 100% ready to run for office off the table, you're most likely going to jump into the race. But there are still things you can do to prepare yourself for success. Even though it might not be perfect, there's still a path. So the first thing that's really important for any candidate to think of is their personal preparation. What about your own life needs to be thought through before running for office? So first, personal relationships. Prepare those who are closest to you for what a run might look like. Do you have kiddos? Do you have a partner? Do you have just kind of village of people that help you live your life? Do you have their support to run for office? Or maybe not just their support, but them saying, I don't quite get it, but I'm here for you. And that's okay too. What does that support look like? Moving on to the next point, caregiving. Does that mean that somebody in your life might have to take over some caregiving duties that you might have? We know that many, not all, but many Latino communities and families are multi-generational. What does caregiving look like in your life there? And are there people in your life that can help you out with any type of caregiving responsibilities you have? What do your personal finances look like? One, because the truth of the matter is this stuff could come up in a campaign, just be prepared. And then two, you might have some things that you would like to cover when running for office that'll come out of your personal finances. Having a clear picture of what that's going to look like ahead of time is a very big deal. Some people might have the resources necessary to pay for whatever personal or individual contributions they need for their finances. A lot of people don't come from that background and might not be able to give any at all. And then I think quite a few people are there in the middle. And if you don't set those boundaries with yourselves ahead of time, it's really easy to say, oh, I'll cover this, I'll do that, I'll think of this. And suddenly you don't have resources for your own life anymore. So make sure to think about that ahead of time. What does that look like? What would your personal contribution financially need to be like? And then you need to think about work. Obviously it ties into your finances. Most of the time people have to work their jobs at the same time that they're running for public office. Is that something you can do? Are you in a position where you can take time off to run for office? Are you in a position where you could perhaps go part-time? On top of that, people need to actually think about their positions too. For example, here in New Mexico, and I think it's the case in many states, appointed positions to state government can't take political stances in some of those appointed positions. If that's the case, when those folks decide to run for office, they actually have to resign from their position. Are you in that space? Maybe you're not, maybe you work in private industry, but you should still probably check in with your folks to make sure that they know that you're running for office and that it's something you can balance with work. And then finally, just be aware of the skeletons in your closet. I know it's something that we are so scared of, but it's so important to have a plan. One, people might use your skeletons against you. Two, your skeletons might actually be the most, the thing that levels the playing field between you and your future constituents and your voters. Bunny gave a great example earlier about being very open about her personal journey with addiction and being drug-free for the past 15 years. Another great example is now Secretary Deb Haaland. You can probably see her right behind me on my little picture. I remember vividly watching her acceptance to be a nominee for cabinet secretary, and she talked about her journey with addiction, her talked about a bunch of the things that people would think of as skeletons, but are exactly why she needs to run for office. So just be ready to defend any attacks on those skeletons. And then two, maybe be ready to unearth them in a way that is a huge benefit to our communities. So now it's your turn. Take some time to reflect. What is one thing you can do to prepare yourself to run for office just as a person, not as a candidate, but as a person? Take a moment to think about that. So the next step, once you've gotten your kind of personal house in order and figured those things out, is to think about what it takes to run as a candidate, as a successful candidate, and determining, as Eva kind of talked about earlier, between winning and losing and what success actually looks like for you. So one, get informed. Get informed on your issues, as we talked about earlier. Most people get involved in running for office because there are particular issues that they care about that are based on their values and their lived experiences. So choose a few of those issues and get as educated on them as you can. Read up on them, learn about what's going on in real time around those issues and become an expert. And think about not just how those issues affect you or the person you were when you were living those experiences, but how they affect your community and your district as well, because people always want to know, but how does this affect me? So think about turning those issues to your community or your specific district, as well as yourself. Get involved in your community. I'm sure many of you already are involved in your community, but think about ways that you can even increase that impact. Are there community organizations that you can start getting involved in? Are there more volunteer opportunities that you can take? How can you get to know the people in your community better and stand with your community when it's time to run it for office? And make sure that they recognize you too. Gain the skills you need to be a great candidate, and think about what you might need, because a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. Just the act of filing for candidacy can be intimidating in and of itself. So thinking through what you think you might need some assistance in. For example, are you a little bit nervous about asking people for money? Well, let me tell you, we got Eva. We got people who can train you all day, every day on fundraising and being more comfortable there. But just know that that might be something that you need to develop and own. Maybe you're a little bit nervous about public speaking. Gain the skills you need to help you feel more comfortable in that space so that you can have one less thing that you're a little bit worried about when you're in your candidacy. Practice resilience. This is something that I would suggest taking on today. Campaigns can get tough, not just for the reasons that people typically think of, there might be mudslinging and stuff like that, but they just take a lot of time in addition to what you're doing on the day-to-day. So find ways to remind yourself why you're here and why you're doing what you're doing. This room that I'm in is my little home office that I'm lucky enough to have. And as I said earlier, I have a picture of Deb Holland behind me to remind me how important it is to be in community and representing our communities and literally changing the face of politics when things get hard. I've got amazing pictures of women of color everywhere. And I have this little thing that I like to remind me that we're building the world we need. So whatever you need to remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing to help you keep getting through those tough times, start building that now. Build a phone list of people that you can call when it's 911 time and you need somebody to just give you some support. And then finally, practice delegation. DA Gonzalez actually mentioned this earlier. Burning out doesn't help anybody. It just doesn't. It doesn't help your community, and it doesn't help you become an active participant in the legislative or elective process. So please, please, please practice delegation. You can't do everything, and that's okay. Look for the people who can help you and give some of those tasks to them. So we're going to have you reflect one more time, or I think a couple more times. But we want you to reflect on one thing you can do to prepare yourself to be a strong candidate. Take a moment to think about that. Great. So the next thing you really need to think about is your network, and analyzing your network and how they can be helpful to you. One, start by analyzing your network. Who's already part of that base? Is it your immediate family? Is it the community that you've built? Is it your chosen family? And who should be in that network as well, looking past that base. Growing your network. How can you add people to this? Is it going to more community meetings? Is it going to neighborhood association meetings? Making sure that people know who you are. And then developing your network. How are you going to prepare them for your run for office? Again, thinking through who could be helpful for a variety of different tasks. So we'll get more into this. Analyzing your network. Do some power mapping. Who's in it? Think about who's on your birthday list, or who's on your holiday card list. Or if you're like me, think about who sends you holiday cards that reminds you that you have gone yet another year without remembering to send out your own holiday cards. Get those people together. Who are your Facebook friends? Friends, families, and family members and colleagues who have your back. And those in your life who helped you along the way.
To Eva to finish out this slide and this section.
Oh, okay, sorry, I might be looking at an old one. I apologize.
No worries.
Alex, you're all good. You're all good, and you're doing an amazing job. Yeah, so I mean, I could talk about networks all day. We all know, the Latinas do the networks the best. Actually, there was a study that happened a couple of years ago that said that Latinas have the most diverse networks. So we're put in a really great position to sort of really hone down and engage them the best when you start running. So power mapping is, this is a really great tool, not just only for you to sort of engage your network, but this is also a really great way to sort of figure out your fundraising and your donors for a campaign. So, just like Alex said, just like thinking about who you have sort of in your orbit right now. My first thing to do all the time when I'm doing power napping is like literally pull my Facebook friends list, going to my Instagram, going to my LinkedIn. Those are the people that I know for sure that are in my vicinity. I have some contact with them already. But sometimes, your current power mapping network is not necessarily political. I'm part of a weekly book club called Bates Brunch and Books. And it's not necessarily a political group, but they are part of my network. And so they might be able to be some people that I could use to and sort of engage. We can move on, Ryan. So analyzing your network, right? So once you have sort of your list of who is even part of your orbit, trying to figure out what their sort of best skill sets or where they kind of have a role in sort of your future in this journey, could go into like what can they provide for you, right? And so we have some examples of what some people can do for, and it doesn't limit them to just one thing, right? A person could give you moral support and also give you resources, whether that's money or access to information. Sometimes someone in your orbit is just an expert on that, that policy or that messaging that you really want to hone down to and like really understand a little bit more. Sometimes it's access, right? One door leads to another door, leads to multiple doors open. Maybe that, there's one person in your network that's very great for that. And, I do think that like we want to talk about like there's people in your orbit that might not like be your volunteers in your campaign or your major donors, but they are giving you sort of a space of support. Maybe it's childcare support, maybe it's caregiving support. Alex mentioned that earlier about, getting your house in order. Maybe those are the people that help you do that. Next slide. Oh, sorry. What am I missing? Sorry. So it looks so much like the previous slide. Yeah. So sometimes, there's people in your network that might not fit into every single role you're thinking of that you need to have when you go through your campaign journey. Sometimes you're like looking at your list and you're like, well, I'm looking for more business leaders on this list, or I'm looking for more activists. I actually don't have it elected in my vicinity, or Democratic committee members. Like, these are people that roles that could be very useful for you, but you're missing in your personal orbit. So what happens then? Well, you could grow your network, which is the next step after you power map. And you could move the slide, Ryan. Oh, I love, Nadine, when you say I love having my kitchen cabinet to just talk to and vent. Obviously, like literally having your close vicinities just to like be your campaign therapist, as you will. Always extremely helpful. That's a great role to play. So yeah, so once you figured out who's in your orbit, what kind of role they could play, where do they sort of fit into this journey? You want to think about like what you're missing. Okay, let's think about how you want to grow, right? Grow that network. I highly recommend if you could join a board. That's a really great way for it to like, sort of get sort of insight to a whole different world and a whole different sort of network. Maybe volunteer on another person's campaign, volunteer for a charity, volunteer just in the community, get out there and meet some folks. Social clubs, if you want to join my Babes Brunch and Books, let me know. We are here. And I think that's a really great network to plug in. Maybe you want to engage your local PTA, especially if you're thinking of that school board seat, in your county, and lots of meetings. We're talking about talking, just getting out there and meeting people, essentially, right? That's just, growing your network, just getting more people sort of in your vicinity. Now, sometimes people get a little confused about this. Be like, isn't deepening my network the same thing as growing? Actually, it's a one step further, right? So you could have like that, extra 20 people that you have met in the last month, but are they the type of people that would go back to bat for you? Right? We kind of need to understand who those folks are. And deepening your network could be just like someone who like help find you a job, you help them find a job, you recruited them to a board, they recruited you to a board, they did a little bit extra for you, or you did for them. And that's what we mean by deepening that network. And we think that once you think about growing it and you bring people into your vicinity, into your network, you could transfer them into what we call like a deep network member, of someone that you feel like you have a stronger connection with because you went to bat for them, or they went to bat for you. And then volunteering on someone else's campaign, another elected, right? We talked about if you're missing an elected person on your network, going to volunteer for them is a great way to sort of deepen that connection and deepen that relationship. And yeah, I don't know if you thought of any other ideas of how you could deepen your network, but these are just one of those things where it's like, if you picked up their kid from school, that's another way you can sort of strengthen someone's relationship with you, knowing that you have their back and they have yours. Now activate them. It sounds like, we're in the Matrix, like press a button, but it's a little bit nuanced than that, right? So like you built out your power napping, who's in your orbit, who you're missing. You've been through the steps to try to get, fill in those holes, as you will, in your network. You deepened those relationships. Now it's time to get them to finally get ready to support you in this journey. And the best thing to go about this is like, you really want to try to figure out like who's responsive to this. Like, maybe like put some sort of fillers in, like, I am thinking of running for office one day. What do you think about that? See how they feel, and they're like, oh yeah, totally, that's awesome, that's great. But maybe sometimes you might want to have to like get people into that journey of start thinking of you as a candidate who does what they say when they will. That's a huge thing, right? Like really having a good understanding of like who can you essentially depend on for a certain type of skill set or a certain type of role, and who is skilled at doing what. This is a really great way for it to like have an understanding of like, You know, you don't want to be asking the person that does the best moral support for you for resources, and the person that could give you the resources and is not capable of giving you best moral support, you know, different kind of asks. You want to give them the right ask for the right skill sets or the right role that you have already figured out that they could play into your journey. All right, and I think this is actually kicking it back to Ryan, full circle.
Thank you so much, Eva. Thank you so much, Alex. I so appreciate your leadership and your wisdom and your stories and your enthusiasm. We are going to close this up by doing the same exercise we do to close all of these step forwards, but having you really think about what are next steps for you and how can you be lifting as you climb. So I want you to be thinking, just in your head, this is a journaling activity for you here now, or whoever joins us through the recording and future, is just start to brainstorm all the ways you can make your community better within the next month, right? Is there a cause you can volunteer for? Is there a rally you can go to? Is there a meeting that you can attend? Is there something that you can vote for? Are there elections coming up so you can help people turn out the vote? Can you help recruit a woman to run for office? Could you apply to run for office? There are some, can you volunteer at a food bank? Can you get involved in some mutual aid work? There are so many opportunities for us to individually take a step or an action to make our communities stronger and better, right? We went over some of them in the training, but we could literally spend all night talking about writing a letter to the editor, helping someone get a job. I see one of our friends in the chat, Nadine, thank you so much, talked about assisting some of your friends on how they can get their children into college, right? Can you tutor someone? But I want you to be thinking just for a moment of one action that you can take to make your community stronger. I'm going to give you a plug, right? Like I said at the beginning, we have affiliates in 27 states. A lot of our affiliates are actively recruiting. One of the ways you can make your community better is by running for office yourself and getting some training to do so. So when you're brainstorming, no idea is a bad idea. Feel free to add this to your list. And I want you to kind of like, if you haven't gotten out a piece of paper and a pen, I encourage you to do that now. Write down that action. Write a little note to yourself that within the next month, you're going to do X. I'm going to invite folks in the chat to just share out, if you want to hop in the chat, get there typing and share one word to describe how you're feeling right now, just to help us close out this evening and time together. Seeing some folks who are chatting to us as panelists directly. Someone is feeling inspired. Someone is feeling hopeful. Thank you so much. And anyone else, you can feel free to chat to anyone or chat it directly to us as panelists. One word to describe how you're feeling. I am feeling humbled. I'm so humbled to be in this space at the moment. Thank you. And that's what we have. Thank you so much for your time and your energy tonight. Like we said at the beginning, this is how we change the face of politics and power. Thank you so much to our sponsors. And again, thank you so much to Alex and Eva for all of your work and for everyone here who joined us this evening. Have a great rest of your evening. And good luck making the world a better place. Bye.